Welcome to the What's So Smart podcast, powered by the Huntsville Madison County Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Clark Dunn. Huntsville, Alabama is known as a smart place, but really, what's so smart about it? In this podcast, we will talk to the leaders of Huntsville's economic and cultural development to answer that question. From rockets to genomics, from cyber to music, What's So Smart will explore the visionary and data-driven initiatives that make Huntsville so smart. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Well, welcome to the What's So Smart podcast. Super excited you're here today. Would you like to introduce yourself, and we'll get started there?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm John Schmitt. I'm the CEO of I Express Jeans.
Yeah. So your journey to get here to Huntsville, you had 20+ year career in the military. Talk a little bit about calling Huntsville home after that career, and what that was like moving here to Huntsville.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. First of all, I never thought I would call Alabama home. My first time in Alabama was actually down in the Wiregrass during flight school.
Okay.
We didn't have a really great relationship, me and Alabama. So when I found out I was getting stationed back here, it was a little bit of an existential crisis, I think, with me and the family. And then, we came and visited and absolutely just fell in love with the place. When I had a very rare opportunity in the Army to actually stay here, and I was here from 2012 until I retired in 2020. And there was no doubt in my mind, this is where I wanted to stay. My kids were happy, had a life here. And obviously, post-military career, there's just tons of opportunity. Yeah. So for us, it was a no-brainer.
And you kind of jumped in head first into the Huntsville community when you got here or shortly after you retired. Talk a little bit about some of those first endeavors in the local music scene and how that kind of came about and, what prompted that decision.
Yeah. So I moved here in 2012. I very quickly met through our kids, Alan Little, and he and I became songwriting partners. And actually, a lot of the segues of the journey of trauma and healing and recovery that led to this role at I Express Jeans all started there. I always say music saved my life because songwriting, little did I know, was actually exposure therapy. And of course, it's a very effective tool for trauma release and trauma acceptance and exposure therapy. And so he and I started writing music together. We published an album that came out right as COVID hit, which not exactly the best timing. But we recognized, I was seeing live music here in Huntsville and seeing it being able to be consumed in a very intimate way. Like it just really touched me. And I noticed that, while it was really cool to have these artists being exposed to the community, I thought it was really important that the artists knew that the community was here to support them. Because there was, right? There just wasn't at the time. Obviously, this is before the Orion.
You were pretty early on in this music ecosystem of Huntsville, I think. I think you were kind of planted the flag, so to speak, and laid the groundwork. But like, how difficult was that to coordinate with local musicians and then advocate on their behalf as far as what was that like in 2000, was it 13 or 14, I guess?
Yeah, I think our first show was in 2013.
Okay. What was that like then?
There's so much raw talent here. And what we saw was a lot of folks would have to go outside of the community to play and if they were here, they were just playing for free because for some reason that's what was kind of accepted here. So we wanted to raise the professionalism bar because truly world-class musicians, folks that have been, they come and they're busking on the corner, but they just played America's Got Talent or was on Showtime at the Apollo, and this community didn't realize it. And so getting to work with them and then getting them, the format was really cool too, because it was an opportunity. It's a super intimate setting, and it was an opportunity for the artists to tell their story behind the songs themselves. And I love storytelling. I can't sing and I can't play an instrument, but I love words. So for, having a songwriting partner that was also playing music that we were creating was a huge outlet for me too. Personally, I got a lot out of it. But then being able to run that show for like 5 years, in the community, and I think it gave a sense of community that wasn't necessarily previously there. But then COVID blew it all up, and it's just so it and thank goodness, the Orion came about and
Mhm.
obviously eclipsed,
Yeah, and this
everything.
ecosystem now of music in Huntsville is probably, I mean, it's probably incredible for you to think about when you first started
Mhm.
that endeavor to get into the local music scene, that you would have never imagined that it would be what it is today.
No, and just then it is a beautiful in reflection. It's a beautiful natural
Mm.
progression. I hate that COVID was the thing that killed it. I would have had like to do it on
Mm.
our terms, but it is really amazing to see where the city is
Mm.
today and how it's postured as a music city.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
So like I said, your experiences have been a little bit of everything, kind of leading up to I Express Genes, but they all kind of laid the groundwork for what you do now and the who you support. Talk a little bit about that next transition right before you came over at I Express Genes. Advanced Manufacturing was a facility you started here in town, AMIC, I believe.
Yeah, so the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Integration Center. So it was a private-public partnership between the Army and the National Center for Defense Manufacturing Machining, which is a national nonprofit that services small businesses in the defense sector and helping insert advanced manufacturing into defense programs and support small businesses going from developmental prototyping and
Mhm.
to full-rate production. When I was still in the military and I was doing weapon system development, and I recognized how important manufacturing really was and how poorly we do it in the defense industrial base. Mostly just because of the nature of defense. We design with a prototype. We say this is good enough. It meets the requirements. And then we go to production with a prototype, which commercial industry would never do. It's
Mm.
just it's cost prohibitive. It's quality control, and then you end up with maintenance, burden on the backside. But that's how we do it, unfortunately, in defense. So the opportunity to just help influence that, and because of the complexity and the cost of the weapon systems that we develop here in Huntsville, between the Army, and all of its tenant units,
Mm.
it was an opportunity to just help support the community, and
Mm.
being a non-biased, player in the space, we
Yeah.
could bring in the national resources of the National Center for Defense Manufacturing Machining, and just really just be a network hub for the community. And
Yeah.
it was really great. And then the other side of that is all of that is great and fine, but it really doesn't matter without a talented workforce
Mm.
that's educated and upskilled in things like digital engineering, model-based system engineering, and advanced manufacturing practices. So the other part of that was plugging into the workforce ecosystem,
Mm.
which was another, it was an honor. It was a great way to continue for me to continue to serve the community, even out of uniform.
Yeah, and so it seems like with both of those ventures, you found this void that was in the community, or in maybe even beyond just the community with the advanced manufacturing, and you kind of figured out a solution to fix that. That kind of is exactly the need. You saw this need that I Express Genes kind of helps solve. Talk a little bit about what I Express Genes is, and kind of what is that need, and what that y'all solve with the technology you use.
Yeah, I think so. It's sometimes it's best. I think it's best to just tell it through the story of like the company itself. So in 2010, Huntsville had a tragedy at the University of Alabama, Huntsville. It was a mass shooting, and Dr. Joe Ng, our founder, was in that conference room that day, and survived. Along with several other people from his faculty, and in the coming months and year, he saw this spectrum of resilience among his peers, and he just, from physical illness to mental health illness, and just he struggled quite a bit. But he noticed this spectrum of resilience, and he said there has to be an immunological component to this. And so he did a small study, took about 100 veterans, had them screened for PTSD, and then took their whole blood, and not to get too technical, but did a reverse RNA transcriptome analysis. So all that to say, genetics is what you're born with. If you have RNA, it's currently making something. So if it's dysregulated, you can see the difference. And coming from that, it proved his theory, but then it sat dormant for a number of years. We were able to come back together, and we actually worked with this incredible community, with some nonprofits and research partners and the university, and built a research collaborative we call the Interdefense Initiative. And through that initiative, we furthered the research to where we are today as a company. We closed a blind study with Wellstone, where we had 0 false positives and we had 1 false negative. And so to ask you, what does it do?
Yeah.
PTSD is created by an autoimmune disorder that leads to inflammation that causes a buildup of oxidative stress that creates the anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
Our tests can tell that inflammation well before the symptoms occur. So we are here really truly to prevent PTSD in a very similar way that a cholesterol test prevents heart attack, stroke, heart disease. We thought in the 80s we couldn't prevent heart disease. And we had a simple biochemical test that now allows early intervention that, has cut that number in half since the 80s. We want to do the same thing because, in the United States, 7% of people have PTSD. It's not just a veteran problem. It's about a $230 billion burden on the United States healthcare system and in lost wages. And just the amount of human suffering. And as a veteran, for me, it was important to find a way to give back. And I've braved the storm very well, but a lot of my friends have not. And I would like for nobody to have to go through that.
Yeah, and so it's kind of the story of how you kind of fell upon even knowing about iExpress Genes. You were just going to Hudson Alpha to have a tour of the space, and you had kind of struck up the conversation with the founder, and it was like, oh, you should definitely check this out. And then thinking now in 2024, end of 2024, you became the CEO. How has that transitioned now, and how do you think the experiences you've had in these other these other jobs in the Army with the local music scene, advanced manufacturing, kind of laid the groundwork for what you do today in iExpress Genes?
I mean, I think that the journey is uniquely Huntsville, right? I mean, there's not many places where you'd given a chance to do so many different things. And really kind of almost as a professional learning laboratory and be accepted in the community to do those. But I think all of those things, even from music, the first time I filed LLC paperwork and a business license, and maybe a little late and maybe some back taxes, but anyway, figured it out. But all those things from the beginning all the way to now, I mean, through, building an organization and a nonprofit and building community awareness and, even using, government affairs and lobbying and engaging our civic leaders, like all of those along the way, I think led us to where we are today, where, we are by all metrics a successful startup. We're launching our product, as we speak. We have partners within the state. We've got support from our federal delegation, and we're set to help people. To answer your question, I mean, I think all of those things put me where I'm supposed to be. I wouldn't be here without those experiences, and honestly, without the supportive community of Huntsville allowing me to try things and fail and succeed and all the things in between. I mean, I don't know that I'd be here.
Yeah, and it's you kind of alluded to it a second ago, but there's some pretty exciting things happening this year for iExpress Genes. There's a lot of announcements that are hopefully going to be happening around the time this is released. What are some of those things that are going to be, that people listening that are interested in finding out more, that can maybe even be a part of the services that iExpress Genes solves? Yeah, so we
obviously had to pass a regulatory hurdle. So we don't need FDA approval. We just needed lab developed test status. So we by the time this airs, we will have it. And then we have a backlog of community partners, mental health care centers, psychological centers, direct primary care and providers, and building that network so that folks know that they can go to them to order the tests, and then to have somebody have, we're not mental health care professionals. We're not in the game of testing somebody and then telling them what it means. We want to be able to have the professionals that know how to care for individuals and then use the test as a tool. So for folks that are interested in testing, we can go to our website. We've got, our partners in that space that can order the test and, be the care partner.
And so as you've kind of ingrained yourself into the Huntsville community with a wide assortment of nonprofits you've been a part of, companies you've started, organizations you've been on, sat on boards, what do you think makes Huntsville such a smart place for you and your experiences you've had?
I would say, so I grew up in the San Francisco East Bay, and how smart people are because they tell you immediately. I think one of the biggest powers to this place is its humility, its ability to collaborate in meaningful ways, where it really truly is usually something much bigger first, right? And I think that humility and that professional ability to collaborate, I think, is unique to this area, especially in the small business community, but kind of just across the community as a whole. People are willing to hear new ideas, think through new things. And I think that's the power.
And you've seen a lot of the community, and I mean, there's probably some overlap you've seen with people from the music scene, maybe with manufacturing and iExpress, but there's definitely some areas where there's different people in different segments. Is there a story or an interaction you had at any time since you've been here in Huntsville that kind of stands out, that is unique, that you're like, oh, this is only something I would have a conversation about because I'm in Huntsville?
I mean, I remember when we first moved here, and I was at a party, and there was a young, I assume she was a student, young lady, and like I think it was a football party, and they were doing shots and just having a big time. And then I find out she's got a PhD in plasma physics and is working on space-based directed energy, and I'm just like,
what?
Of course,
of course,
that's this town.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like one of the first experiences I had where I was like, okay,
I can't
assume nothing.
Yeah, assume that you're saving the world on a spacecrafts, and you also really enjoy going to listen to punk music. It's like it could be be both.
Yeah, and I think one other thing on the music side is here folks are where they're solving challenging problems for the national defense apparatus or for space or in federal law enforcement. But then they've got this whole other life where they're a creative or they have a band or whatever. And I think that is, I think, unique where, people are not using their brainwidth to deal with, daycare and traffic and parking. They're able to use that extra time to do things that are meaningful for themselves, for their families, and then, have creative outlets. Like, I think that's kind of unique for this area.
Huntsville has I would say the most people with hobbies. Like the hobbyists here in Huntsville, it's hard to talk with a engineer or someone, a doctor or whoever it might be, and they're not a craftsman or a welder or I like working on cars or whatever it might be, because they all everyone kind of has their they're book smart in this field, but they love doing a variety of other things, which I think is unique. And I think that collaborative nature, that all these things can happen and coincide with each other in Huntsville is unique. And it's something that it's hard to think it's somewhere like other cities have this.
I haven't seen it in places I've lived.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I've enjoyed having you here today. I think the work that you do with iExpress Jeans, I think the impact you're going to have in not only the state and in 2025, but all across the country. I think is going to be incredible. And your resume and all the different things you've done, I think, has definitely laid the groundwork. But we'll be sure to have all the information in the episode notes if you want to find out anything. But I appreciate you being here today.
No, thanks so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed hearing more about what makes Huntsville so smart.